What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I will be talking about the Romancing Festival Asellus banner, the second banner that got announced yesterday, and this will be a preview. This banner was changed according to the JP version, and they added Erie, a character from the past SaGa Soul banner that was skipped. So we have 4 styles, better value, but I don't know, there's still 2 characters that are not that important anyway. We are here on Reddit, on a post by Hands43, as always, an amazing job. Asellus starts with 125% STR, she has 102% agility, it's good because she's a debuffer, 105% intelligence, it's good as well, but most of her debuffs comes from guarantee, and will is 105%, with endurance being on the low levels being just 88. Asellus never has high enough endurance, and her status, if you compare to the recent styles, are not that great, deserve a little more buffing here. Well, moving on, we have 300 HP healing when attacking, and 1 BP. Also, when attacking, grants herself an attack boost that will increase her damage output by 15%. Then, attack or spell will trigger Mirage Step Plus. This is a chase attack that is full AoE and can debuff the intelligence of the enemy, in this case by 10% because it's rank 1. Then she has a 37% chance to activate her skill number 3. This is something that is super important, and we will be discussing as soon as we understand what is Piercing Alliance, something that she gets when turn begins. It gives her 2 stacks off. When attack lands, she'll be debuffing STR and intelligence by 5%. And then also a defense down that will decrease the defense of the enemy by 10%. Okay, you have 2 stacks, right? The defense down only lasts for 1 turn, so it's not as impactful, but I guarantee STR and intelligence debuff for a character that already has a chase. It's increasing the debuff value by, well, 10% extra. And, well, she already has this skill on skill 3. That is fast. Before she attacks, she grants herself the Piercing Alliance. Same thing, 2 times. But to everyone, but including herself, since it's fast and she could have been faster, to be honest, everyone that attacks after her will also be able to debuff the enemy. Now, let's just talk about Asellus herself. Okay, she will then be attacking with this skill and debuffing 10%. Then, actually 20 because of her permanent Piercing Alliance, and then actually 10% more because of her Mirage Step. So 20% STR debuff and 30% intelligence debuff, and allowing everyone else's to debuff as well. The good thing about this is that, well, everyone else's will be able to debuff 10% if they attack after her. But we are talking about characters that attack. She doesn't combo super well with people like Erie or Darius, people like that. But if you have at least 3 attackers in the party, you can say that you can get another 20% debuff to reach, for example, 50% intelligence debuff and 40% STR debuff. This will break James. James, for example, he can reach 45% STR debuff and 30% intelligence debuff. His STR debuff is higher, or he can choose to debuff intelligence by 50% but no STR. She also competes with Paulus. Paulus is different though. Paulus allows everyone to debuff, but he allows that via passive. He does not need to use a skill in order to trigger the effect. He is easy to use in all squads because he does not need BP battery, and he can also use a skill that buff breaks the enemy. Paulus has 2 different chases, but none are guaranteed. But he also has skills that can debuff, and he allows you to debuff either STR or intelligence. You have to choose via direct or indirect attacks. It is harder to use Paulus than to use Asellus when deciding the status you want to debuff. But it's easier to just run him if you know what you're doing. While Asellus will have to have BP batteries. Well, she only gets 5 BP or 6 if she chases. But imagine a situation that you are now chasing. You are chasing, then all of your older characters will then be able to debuff up to 20% instead of 10%. We are also talking about characters with chase, because to be able to debuff twice, they need to attack twice. We can reach certain situations where I will be debuffing a lot. Especially because on Overdrive, she has a guarantee chase with this skill. Okay, so you have the command, the guaranteed chase, the extra from passive, and then maybe a fourth one. So Asellus herself can be debuffing at least 30% or 40% STR, and for intelligence will be either 40 or 50% by herself, not considering anyone else's. Depending on the party, you won't see damage from boss. This is all incredible, but there's just one important thing. Some bosses hate to be super debuffed, like we saw in the past, using Paulus could trigger some different mechanics. Not just Paulus though, even James would trigger different mechanics. So if the enemy just uses the 5 weakness in the end of turn and it has no extra rules about debuffing, this will be insane. Really, it would be amazing to have this running. But this only happens because they change it. On JP, she only has Piercing Alliance on Battle Begins, not every turn, so she is now much better. She didn't have also the chance to chase with skill number 3. Now it is permanent. Let's talk about the remaining stuff. She also has 20% damage increase, and then she also has 10% damage reduction. Don't ask me why. 37% chance to evade attacks, and by the end of a turn, she gets 45 points of OG Gouge. That's right, 45 points. Well, when she uses her skill number 3, she already gets 12 OD points. If she chases again, it's another 12. But the Mirage Stab already gives her 20. Let's do the calculation, right? 45 points plus 12 plus 20, at least it's 77. If you're running Erie in your party, Erie can give you as much as 30 points if he uses his skill tree twice. That means that Asilos will be on Overdrive every turn. That's right, so that guarantees at least 3 stacks of all these debuff effects. Okay, then where is that she will be shining? On the new challenge, the Battle versus the 7 Heroes, because they have some very restricted rules on the challenge stage, where if you use a skill to debuff, they will cleanse. If you use a spell, they will cleanse different debuffs. So she can actually just focus on physical attacks and be able to debuff everything that you actually need. Not actually everything, but STR and intelligence are the most important things there. Dexterity and agility are not as important. So in the end, she will allow for some very buffed debuff strategies when compared to anything that came before. Okay, even more, she has this thing that on turn begins, she gets a 50% attack boost, and then also a 50% defense boost every turn. So that's how she decreases damage taken. And then on multiply of 3 turns, she would then cast the same thing, but again, and lasts for 2 turns. And, well, let's say that you have like 50% damage increase, 50% damage reduction, and then on turn 3 and 4, you have double the effects. It's like having 66% of the time the double effects, and 1 turn she won't have, but she's pretty defensive in my opinion, and in the end, she won't die easily. But that's not just it. She has a second skill that is AoE and fast that applies Phantom for 4 turns to all allies. Phantom has 25% chance to evade. You can even cast this twice in a row to have 2 stacks of 25% chance to evade. And since it lasts just for 4 turns, I don't know if you actually want to use this, because if you are using this, you are not debuffing, since she really needs to attack to be able to debuff the enemies. Unlike Paulus that still allows everyone else to debuff if he's not debuffing himself. So stick to using S3 and bring Erie to give her OG points so that she is on full potential. This character is really broken if you know what you're doing, and will receive a 4.5 at least in my future review. I would say still skippable if you have Paulus at least, but she's yet another level of potential. Moving on, we have Death, and Death is now in an improved version of his past self. 100% endurance, but 110% will, and 132% intelligence. Agility could have been higher, but that's okay. Moving on, all allies gets 30% damage increase for the whole fight, and 30% reduction for damage for the whole fight as well. Starts the fight with 14 DP because of the skill number 3. Then we have HP recover, a revive, if you die. And then you have 1 less LP because of that. Then by turn ends, recovers 1 BP, and also recovers the HP of all surviving allies by probably around 300. So a 4 BP per turn character only needs extremely high support that he can give himself. Of course, it will take some time. You have to use this skill 2-3 times to get this elemental enhance, increasing damage potential for shadow damage by 50%, for a total of 150% increase, and then you also get 1 extra VP per turn. 3 stacks of this means that you have then 7 VP per turn, so that you have a perfect cycle of his skills. But if you are using this skill, you are not doing something that would be important. Besides, we have 30% heat up to reach 150% damage increase on turn 5 and beyond, but we also have Mighty Warrior. That increases damage potential by another 20, reduces damage taken by 30, and reduces it another time by 40% if you are resisting. So all in all, we can reach 200% damage increase, and then if you are using skill number 2, you can reach as much as 350% damage increase when using Shadow at least. It was also meant to be a debuffer, with skill number 3, that can debuff the intelligence by 20% on max level, so 40% intelligence debuff, but you cannot do this easily. You cannot debuff on turn 1, because you also want to use skill number 2. So, well, Death can work well with people like Asellus, because Asellus is also shadow-based, but also works well with Saruin. Something that I didn't say about Asellus, to be honest, is that she works super well with Saruin, because Saruin also gives 3 BP when you are attacking with shadow attacks, and all of her attacks are shadow-based. So she's going to increase shadow damage for everyone. She will also be able to get 3 extra BP. And the remaining one can come from Erie. Erie works with non-squads. We don't need to use anything else. Now, for the remaining parts, if you are using skill number 2, no one is debuffing unless you have someone like Asellus, and then if you have someone like Asellus, you don't really need to use this skill number 3 that can debuff intelligence by 40%. So there's a problem here. I feel like you can actually just bring his inheritance from the past style to apply the healing plus damage reduction via defense boost, but for defense boost, we have better characters, we have better setups as well. It is hard to justify Death just because of his design and wastes his time to start debuffing or start to, I don't know, apply defense boost and healing. That's a conflicted design, and I believe Death only deserves a 3 out of 5 anyway. Moving on, we have Patrick, and Patrick is a very peculiar character with 105% endurance, 105% will, and 120% agility alongside 125% intelligence. Those are good status, but nothing spectacular. Okay, and what you can do with this guy is to increase the damage potential of a squad, but for a very short amount of time. He gives 3 EP to all allies, including himself, starting with 13 then. And on turn begin, 3 times, he would then increase the action order of the all by extreme, the highest value possible. Then a 50% attack boost and also a 35% buff to all allies. That's right. I'm not so sure if it's 35 or 30%, but I'll say that in my full review. Then, when all allies are alive, for all allies, they will be reducing damage taken by, I believe, 30%, and they will also do 30% more damage to weak targets. So, see, he's trying to amplify your damage, and that's exactly what he wants to do, because skill number 2 uses 7 BP, and it's fast, and he would just apply a 2 again. So, on the next turn, turn 2, you actually have double the effect. Turn 3, double the effects again. But turn 4, only once, because this only works 3 times, right? It will also give an increase to the BP of everyone, and also 5 BP to them all, so that they can use their best skills without any conflict. But he himself won't be doing damage. I don't know if this is such a good idea. Then skill number 3 is column attack with Sudden Pierce from Summer Blue, where he can buff intelligence to all allies by up to 25%. And the first skill is just he power column, where he can actually act as a farmer, but I don't think he works well. It will be on a very specific stage, and we have so many good farmers anyway, like Mikhail just destroys this guy. So he works for people that want to defeat some Spiral Corridor Floors in 4 turns at most, with very specific squads. But He needed more. He needed like something like, I don't know, buff overdrive, damage, charge overdrive, gorgeous, and without this, he's just a very simplistic character that is not really useful for long fights. So I will say he deserves just a 2.5 out of 5. You may have fun with him, but he's totally not necessary or important anyway. The last one will be Erie, and she's a bow user of wind element, and she's actually good. We have 85% endurance, very low volley, but at least 105% will. 125% intelligence and 108% agility because she is a spellcaster. She needs a bow with the wind element. Moving on, she has a very interesting thing, Blast of Favorable Wind. On turn begins, she applies to everyone in the party. This passive where they have a 37% chance to apply one evasion for one time, one turn. So the first hit will be evaded, but it's just a chance and it's not for the whole turn. So the enemy attacked you once, it's over. And they will also receive this Blast of Reverse Wind. When using an indirect attack, they will be able to buff SGR, Dexterity, and Intelligence by 20%. So that's nice for some characters like Therese and Leon, because of each new attack will allow them to keep increasing their damage. People with many chases will be stronger. This is permanent for the fight and she applies right on start. If she dies, it doesn't matter. By the end of a turn, she also recovers 2 BP. Now, for the second part, when she attacks, she always changes with skill number 3. That is a double S power attack, slash and pierce, that buffs will by 30% to everyone, and then it buffs the intelligence of the enemy, its single target, by up to 20% on max level. So that's nice. Double S power chase with guarantee is okay. If she's on overdrive, she doesn't chase again. So you can actually attack 3 times with this and reach very high will. This will be 90%. It's very similar to what you could do with the latest Aslan Malek that could buff either 75 or 100%, but she also buffed endurance. Besides that, she decreased damage taken by 30% and also skill damage by 40%. Okay, now there's something interesting. When she uses skill number 2, it's a fast skill with 8 PP cost. She can apply this defense boost of medium effect, decreasing damage taken by 25%. Also, a defensive stance that decreases indirect damage by 25%, and a defensive stance versus skills that will decrease damage taken by another 25%. The defensive stance part is not stackable, if I'm not mistaken. And the defense boost part is, if the enemy uses a spell, it will be always indirect. If it uses a skill that is also indirect, then both parts will work alongside the defense boost. So, besides all of that, when using skill number 2, we will recover 5 BP, so that it becomes free. Well, she gets already 5 BP per turn and gets another 5 for a total of 10. And OG Gouge will increase to everyone in the party by 15 points. Well, that's good because we don't have that many cards that can do this. Because of her BP generation. And if she's used it with someone else like Sheree or maybe Leon or someone else, she can cycle between using skill number 2 and skill number 3. If you want. But then she doesn't become so reliable for debuffing because bosses just like to cleanse debuffs every turn. That means that you need a secondary debuffer and she will be your... That means that she cannot be your only debuffer. But overall, you can also just decide to keep using skill 2 forever. Or use her for some damage and also buffing. She still has skill number 1 that's terrible. Well, it just applies guard up to self, and if you use it on OG, it applies a guard up somehow to all allies besides self. It's terrible, but it's free as well. I believe this character can be very useful because of allowing people to evade, but this is just one hit. Well, I guess this character can be very helpful because of the weapon being bow. We still need more characters for bow remembrance, but I also not so sure if she will be so good for real challenges besides being chosen from the right fights. Because if you are stacking all the 3 effects here, it's amazing because it's like 3 stacks of 25 just at one usage, and she can do something else. We take a lot of time to build 3 medium effects, like 3 turns usually. But with people like Katarina and also Newest, Empress, Sheree, Leon, and all of them, we may not need that many effects in the end. You already have them. It will be more for extreme support for bows. But if you already have Liz, Sheree, and some of the recent ones like Therese and all, you are pretty set, and you can wait for other OG specialists that can give you OG points or other types of effects. But nonetheless, she has 2 different users, either as a damage dealer buffer or as a full defense booster. That is amazing in my opinion. I am torn between a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 grade for this character. And I believe she's the second best of the banner, because Asellus is the best one. No questions asked. And Death is skippable, not much to offer. Patrick is just gimmick, not much to offer. And Erie at least has a place to play her game. But I believe this banner will only receive a silver award, because 2 cards are really skippable. Overall, I believe the Matriarch banner is better because he has 4 very useful styles, but Asellus is better than anyone in that banner. So it's hard to decide, especially now because we don't have many gems, and Anniversary is coming, so I believe that if you're not a fan of either Asellus or Matriarch, you should actually save and wait 1 week to see what's coming. But of course, just my opinion. It is also my opinion and also my first impressions. Please see here in the comments if you agree or not. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope to see you soon in the next video or live stream. Goodbye.